Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad podcast with Chris Finn, a production of P4S Golf. Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and today I want to talk about back spasms. We've seen probably the most notable, one of the biggest tournaments, Tiger Woods having back spasms at the Masters, we see it every week. players come down with spasms, and if you're listening to this, and I'm sure you know at least one golfer, if not it may be you that you've had back spasms while playing or practicing. We all know that feeling where you take a swing and then like your back just locks up like a knot, and like every move you make sucks. Back spasms suck when they happen, and there's nothing fun about them. The only silver lining that I wanted to highlight today is, number one, you can usually kind of predict if you're at risk for them. There are signs to look out for that will tell you, hey, I potentially could have one coming. And then if you do have one, let's say you miss those signs. If you do have one, I want to talk about giving you some strategies to get rid of the spasm so that you can get back to playing as quick as possible without popping a crap ton of Advil or something and then hoping it goes away. So couple, I guess I would call it predictors of back spasm. So if you haven't done the home assessment, we'll make sure to put the home assessment link in the show notes here. Go do the home assessment. The number one predictor of you potentially being a higher risk for back spasms is not having at least 40 degrees of hip internal rotation, particularly on your lead side. So if you're a right-handed player, or you play right-handed, you swing right-handed, your left hip. If you swing left-handed, then it's your right hip. Those are the two most important. It does change based on if you swing righty or lefty. If you don't have at least 40 degrees of internal rotation, honestly, 45 is better, then you are at a high risk likelihood of having something go off in your back, spasming, something like that, like something along those lines. Now, the faster you swing, so you start swinging, 110, 115, 120, we then want to see probably 45 to north of 45 up to close to 50 degrees of hip rotation on that test. So the first thing to do if you have not had a back spasm, or if you've had a back spasm in the past and you're like, well, why the hell did I have a back spasm? How do I not have that happen again? Grab the assessment in the show notes. It's free. It takes 5 minutes to do it, not even. That's the number one thing to look at. There's 4 tests in the rotary assessment. The second one, though, I'm only going to really say I'm going to push hard on these first 2. You can certainly do the other 2; they are important. But if we're talking specifically for back spasm, these first 2 are definitely by far and away the most important, like no questions asked. So number 1 is that hip internal rotation. Number 2 is your shoulder external rotation. So if you think of a baseball player, a pitcher, when they throw the ball, how their arm kind of cocks back really far, that's external rotation. We need that much like on the lead hip, you need a lot of internal rotation. On the trail shoulder, you need a lot of external rotation, okay? So for a right-handed player, this is your right arm. And for a left-handed player, this is your left. So the shoulder, your trail shoulder and your lead hip. Those are the single 2 most important joints that we need to make sure have the right amount of mobility to decrease the likelihood of spasming happen. The reason why spasming happens is because basically a motion gets overloaded, and that could be you just are pushing more mobility than you actually have, or it could be a lack of strength. So basically overuse, so the muscles just get fatigued out, and what happens is in the back musculature just seizes up, basically in an attempt to get you to stop because it's like, I can't handle it right now. And so the reason why the predictor of your back spasm has nothing to do with your back is because your back spasm isn't actually a back problem. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Your back spasm actually is not a back problem. So if your back has spasmed, you don't have a bad back. What you have is a back who's trying to compensate for all the other joints sucking ass. That's literally what's happening. Okay. If your other joints are no good, you don't have the mobility in your hip, you don't have the mobility in your shoulder. I'm just talking about that's just the mobility side. The other areas where you could be lacking are you don't have the strength in those ranges of motion. So if you're not strong enough and or you don't have the mobility, you're going to be at higher risk for back spasms. The reason why over 52% of golfers experience some sort of back injury every single year, and the average time that people are out is over 2 weeks, is not because golfers just have bad backs. It's because, and it's not because the golf swing stresses the back. It's because the golf swing stresses a need and basically exposes if you don't have rotary capabilities in your hips, and particularly in your shoulders, also in your thoracic spine or your neck. But your shoulders and your hips are by far and away the two most important areas that you have to have. So there's this massive misnomer, or this false, called quote unquote false news, that the golf swing's hard on your back. The golf swing is hard on the rotary centers. It requires rotary capabilities, and it requires you to be strong within those capabilities. Now, unfortunately, particularly in the Western world, most golfers, we don't do a lot of work in the rotary capacity. Just general life, right, is very much forward and backward, side to side. So we naturally, if we're not actively working exclusively to focus on rotary capabilities in the hips and the shoulders and in the spine, like we're not getting that movement in our day-to-day life, other than when you go swing a golf club. So if you don't train your body to rotate, and particularly as we get older into our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, if you're not training those motions, your body's going to tend to try to restrict that, because the less mobility you have, it's less work for your body. And your body's number one job, survival mode, is to survive. So less work requires less energy. Less work or less mobility requires less strength, right? So if you have less mobility, then there's less strength necessary, which means there's less energy expenditure just to live. So if you want to play the game of golf and you want to avoid stressing your back on your back trying to help everything else out, we have to have specific focuses on our hips and on our shoulders and on our spine and on our neck to make sure that we have those rotary capabilities. Okay. So the number one way to predict if you're at risk for back pain, or, particularly a spasm, if you've had a spasm, so let's say you've had a spasm and you go take these tests and you fail the hip or you fail the shoulder, the number one thing that I would tell you is fix those joints. Fix those joints and you immediately decrease your likelihood of another back spasm. That's step one. Okay. So, and obviously the faster that you swing, the more mobility that is necessary for you to have a decreased risk of injury. Now, for the next step, or level 2, I would say, is then the strength levels, right? So this is where you can look at power tests, particularly lower body and upper body, to look at how much power you're able to produce through your lower body and your upper body. The other at-risk factor that we will see, and this is also in that home assessment in the show notes, do it. It's free. Gives you all the answers. Is if your club head speed is at a very high percentile for your age, but your power metrics suck, right? They're very low. That means that you're swinging faster than what your body's capable of supporting. I think this is the cool thing of where we've actually, through all the research we've done, been able to identify what's your max safe swing speed based on your physical metrics, right? And so unfortunately, most golfers, particularly single-digit golfers, if you're single-digit handicap, I'm talking to you. Most of you guys, most of us, swing faster than our body can handle because technically we've gotten very good. We have the right equipment. Technically, we're efficient, and those efficiencies can actually get our club head speed to outpace what our body's actually physically able to handle. And eventually, it's basically just a ticking time bomb until at some point we explode. And a lot of times, it's a back spasm that occurs. So, got to get the mobility, particularly in the hip, the lead hip, and the trail shoulder. And we have to have the strength and the power and able to be able to support those areas. Now, the cool thing a lot of people don't realize is if all you do is stretch and do mobility and you don't do strength, you're just going to continually go in a circle, because the reason why your body's going to want to tighten you up is because you're not strong enough to support and maintain that motion. So gaining mobility is actually twofold. Like, think of a gymnast, particularly the guys, how strong and like muscular they are, yet they're super crazy flexible. Because if they were that flexible and they weren't strong, they'd be an absolute disaster in terms of health, in terms of injury, joint history, orthopedic health. So you need both, because the stronger you are, you actually have to do less mobility work, because you should be able to maintain it as you're playing and as you're moving through your daily life, because your body's not worried about being able to support all that motion and all that speed that you're going after. So those are kind of the, I guess, 1 and 2 of how to identify if A, you're at risk, or B, if you've had a back spasm, why you likely had a back spasm. You notice I haven't said zip about your back. Okay. Now let's talk about the back does spasm. Okay. You're on a golf trip, whatever. Maybe you're just practicing your back spasms. I would say widely accepted orthopedic treatment is rest, Advil, ice, heat, and do that. Sure, maybe you'll be back in 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, you didn't actually fix anything; you just kind of let it rest and kind of go away. If you want to get back playing quicker, like 24 to 48 hours, what you need to do is you need to figure out which muscle seized up that caused the back to seize up. So I'm going to say it again. You have to find which other muscle in your body, usually your hip, seized up that caused your back to seize up. It's not your back. Rubbing your back isn't going to make it go away. Your back is spasming in response to a tug of war. Okay. So some other muscle is pulling, as locked down and tightened up opposite the back, and the back is tightening down in response to that. So think of it's a tug of war. Okay. So if you can get the original muscle that spasmed, you can find that and get that to release. Guess what? The back relaxes. Okay. So stop going after your back. That's dumb. Be smarter than that. Okay. Now you know, right? Before it was just ignorance. Now you know. So the most common areas that you're going to want to go after, and you can find this on our YouTube channels, P4S Golf, Par for Success. You can also give us a call. You can do the home assessment. That's all the information's in there. Okay. I'm trying to give you guys like the DIY guide to fixing your spasms here. The most common areas that you're going to probably go after are going to be your TFL, your tensor fasciolata. You can do this with a lacrosse ball or a softball. And basically, if you don't know where the TFL is, it's this little muscle in kind of the front hip pocket. Google's an amazing thing. You can also go check it out on Google. Look up an image, find out where the TFL is. YouTube, type in TFL release at the Par for Success YouTube page. You can watch the video how to do this. TFL, the other one is going to be your gluteus medius. So your glute muscles. The gluteus medius is the one a little bit more on the side. So if you find your kind of side hip bone, right? The muscle just in front of it is the TFL. That's in like your hip pocket if you're sitting. The muscle right behind it, up to kind of your belt line, that's your gluteus medius. So those are usually two very common ones that will seize up because the hip didn't have enough mobility. You're trying to rotate hard into the hip, and those muscles are like, we ain't got it. Seize up so this dude stops rolling into my hip. So they seize down, and then that same side back locks up. So if your right back goes out, particularly check those two muscles on your right. Okay, now you can get cross referral stuff, but usually it's same side if it's those two muscles. So I'm gonna give you the big three. So those are the first two. The big third one is the psoas. Okay, so when you search this, it's spelled differently than how it sounds. It's PSOAS. So PSOAS is psoas. It's a deep hip flexor that comes up from the inside of the groin and the hip up to your spine. On the front, attaches to the side of your spine, up to like your belly button, up to through the lumbar spine. When that muscle seizes, it pulls on the front. Okay, and that muscle, when that pulls on the front, then the back has to pull because it's going to try to counter it. So those would be the big three muscles. If you are feeling a back spasm, get a lacrosse ball, get a softball. Softball definitely for the psoas. Lacrosse ball is too small. And you basically find the softball, you roll those areas, kind of roll slowly up and down until you find the spot that hurts like hell. And if you even the jackpot is when you find a spot hurts like hell, and it refers to where you feel your back spasm, like it recreates your back spasm by hitting the ball on one of those other muscles. Then we know that is the trigger point from that muscle that's causing your back to spasm. Just chill there. It's going to twitch out. And eventually it's going to relax. You're going to stand up, and the back's going to feel a hell of a lot better. Right? And you just repeat that, a couple times a day. Keep it loose, and you should be able to get back to playing really, really quickly. So hopefully that covers, in a quick nutshell, a lot of information thrown at you. Hopefully that diffuses a lot of just bad information that's out there. You notice not once did I say you had a back problem. You don't. Your back's just trying to help out, and it's the unlucky neighbor that just tried to do too much. But you may want to go back, listen to this again, maybe listen to it 2-3 times if you've had back pain. Share this with any of your friends, any of your buddies that have had spasms, or maybe they're currently spasming right now, particularly if you're playing a 4-ball and it's your partner. Get this to them. Hopefully we get them back on the course ASAP. and even more so, hopefully, we prevent a lot of back spasming from occurring, because it's an epidemic in the golf world, and one that's ridiculously easy to prevent. So, thanks as always for hanging out with me. I look forward to catching you in the next episode.